My name is Evelyn, and I'm 63 years old. I never thought I'd be the kind of woman to tell a story like this, but life has a way of surprising you. Especially when you think you know the person sleeping beside you. For nearly 40 years I was married to Harold. We built a life together, raised 2 children, and weathered every storm side by side. Or so I thought. Before I share what happened, let me ask you, have you ever been betrayed by someone you trusted with your whole heart? What would you do if the person you loved most suddenly turned their back on you? Could you forgive, or would you fight for your dignity? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your stories matter, and you never know who you might help. Now let me take you back to the day my world changed. It was a Tuesday afternoon, the kind of day that feels ordinary until it isn't. I was folding laundry in the living room when Harold came home early from work. He looked nervous, fidgeting with his keys, and I knew something was wrong before he even opened his mouth. "Evelyn, we need to talk," he said, not meeting my eyes. I set the laundry aside, my heart pounding. "What is it, Harold?" He took a deep breath. "I'm leaving. I've met someone else. She's younger and I want a new start." For a moment I couldn't breathe. The words hung in the air, heavy and sharp. I stared at him, searching his face for any sign that this was a joke, a misunderstanding. But there was nothing, just cold certainty. I felt the world tilt beneath my feet. 40 years gone in a single sentence. I wanted to scream, to cry, to beg him to stay. But I didn't. Instead I stood up, my hands trembling, and asked, "How long?" He hesitated, then said, "A few months. Her name is Lisa. She makes me feel young again." I nodded, numb. "And what about me, Harold? What am I supposed to do?" He shrugged, unable to meet my gaze. "I'm sorry, Evelyn. I really am. But I need this." He packed his things that night, leaving me alone in the house we'd built together. I sat in the dark, listening to the echo of his footsteps, the slam of the door, the silence that followed. I thought about all the years I'd given him, all the sacrifices I'd made, and I felt a rage I'd never known before. But I also felt something else, a spark of determination. I wasn't going to let Harold's betrayal define me. I wasn't going to let him walk away without consequences. If he wanted a new life, I would show him just how much he was leaving behind. The first few days were the hardest. I wandered through the house in a daze, every room a reminder of the life we'd shared. The kitchen where we'd cooked Sunday breakfasts, the living room where we'd watched our children take their first steps, the bedroom where we'd whispered secrets in the dark. I cried until I couldn't cry anymore, then I got angry. Really angry. I called my daughter Melissa and my son James. They were both shocked, but they rallied around me, offering comfort and support. "You don't deserve this, Mom," Melissa said, her voice fierce. "You gave Dad everything. If he can't see that, it's his loss." James was quieter, but his hug spoke volumes. "We're here for you, Mom. Whatever you need." I realized then that I wasn't alone. I had my children, my friends, and most importantly, I had myself. I started making a list of everything I'd put on hold for Harold. Trips I'd wanted to take, hobbies I'd abandoned, dreams I'd shelved. I decided it was time to start living for me. But I also knew I couldn't just let Harold walk away without facing the consequences of his actions. I started gathering information, bank statements, property deeds, insurance policies. I met with a lawyer, determined to protect what was rightfully mine. I wasn't out for revenge, not at first. I just wanted justice. I wanted Harold to understand that you can't throw away 40 years without a price. As the days turned into weeks, I found strength I didn't know I had. I started going for walks every morning, breathing in the fresh air and letting the rhythm of my steps clear my mind. I joined a painting class at the community center, rediscovering the joy of creating something beautiful with my own hands. I reconnected with old friends, filling my evenings with laughter and conversation instead of tears. But Harold's betrayal still haunted me. I saw him around town sometimes, always with Lisa on his arm. She was young, pretty, and always perfectly put together. I wondered if she knew what kind of man Harold really was. If she understood the pain he'd left behind. I wondered if she cared. One afternoon, I ran into them at the grocery store. Harold looked uncomfortable, but Lisa smiled, oblivious to the tension. "Evelyn, it's so nice to finally meet you," she said, her voice syrupy sweet. "Harold's told me so much about you." I forced a smile, refusing to let her see how much it hurt. I'm sure he has, I replied, my voice steady. I hope he's told you what a wonderful father and husband he's been. Harold shifted uncomfortably, but Lisa just laughed. Oh, he's wonderful. We're so happy together. I nodded, biting back the urge to say something cruel. Instead, I turned and walked away, my head held high. I refused to let them see me broken. That night, I sat down and made a plan. If Harold wanted a new life, I would give him one, but not the way he expected. I would show him what it meant to lose everything he'd taken for granted. I would show him that I was stronger than he ever imagined. What would you do if you were in my shoes? Would you let him go? Or would you fight for your dignity? Tell me in the comments, your voice matters. The next morning, I woke up with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. I made myself a strong cup of coffee and sat at the kitchen table, reviewing the notes I'd made the night before. I wasn't just going to survive Harold's betrayal, I was going to thrive. And if he thought he could walk away from our marriage without consequences, he was about to learn just how wrong he was. My first step was to meet with my lawyer, Mrs. Carter, a sharp, no-nonsense woman who had seen her share of messy divorces. I brought her every document I could find: bank statements, the deed to our house, retirement accounts, and even old receipts for things Harold had bought over the years. She listened carefully, her pen moving quickly across her notepad. Evelyn, you've been smart, she said, looking up at me over her glasses. You have a clear record of your contributions to this marriage. You're entitled to half of everything, and possibly more, given the circumstances. I felt a surge of relief. For so long, I'd let Harold handle the finances, trusting him to do what was right. Now I was grateful for every receipt I'd ever saved, every account I'd insisted on keeping in my name. Mrs. Carter assured me that we would fight for what I deserved, and for the first time since Harold left, I felt hope. But I didn't stop there. I started making changes in my own life, too. I redecorated the house, painting the walls a cheerful yellow and filling the rooms with fresh flowers. I donated Harold's old clothes to charity, clearing out the closets and making space for myself. I even bought a new set of dishes, something I'd always wanted but never felt justified in purchasing. Each small change was a step toward reclaiming my life. Melissa and James visited often, helping me with projects around the house and encouraging me to try new things. Melissa signed us up for a pottery class, and we spent our Saturday mornings laughing over lopsided bowls and crooked mugs. James took me hiking, showing me trails I'd never explored before. Their support was a lifeline, reminding me that I was loved and valued, no matter what Harold had done. Meanwhile, word of Harold's new relationship spread quickly through our small town. Some people were sympathetic, offering hugs and kind words when they saw me at the market or the post office. Others were less subtle, whispering behind my back or giving me pitying looks. I refused to let their opinions define me. I held my head high, determined to show everyone that I was more than just the woman Harold had left behind. One afternoon, I received a call from Harold. His voice was hesitant, almost apologetic. Evelyn, I need to come by and pick up a few things I left behind. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. That's fine, Harold, but I'd appreciate it if you called first. This is still my home. He agreed, and a few days later, he arrived with Lisa in tow. She stayed in the car while Harold came inside, gathering his belongings in silence. I watched him move through the house, noting the way he avoided looking at me, the way his shoulders slumped with each trip to the car. As he was leaving, he paused at the door. Evelyn, I know I hurt you. I'm sorry. I hope someday you can forgive me. I looked at him, feeling a strange mix of anger and pity. Maybe, Harold, but forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. And it doesn't mean you get to walk away without consequences. He nodded, unable to meet my eyes, and left without another word. After he was gone, I sat down and wrote a letter to myself. A promise that I would never let anyone make me feel small again. I would fight for my happiness, for my dignity, and for the life I deserved. The divorce proceedings moved quickly. With Mrs. Carter's help, I secured a fair settlement, half of our assets, the house, and a portion of Harold's retirement. Lisa, it turned out, wasn't as interested in Harold when she realized he no longer had the financial security she'd expected. Within months, their relationship began to unravel. I heard from friends that Harold was struggling. He called Melissa and James, asking if they could help him with odd jobs or lend him money. They refused, standing by me and reminding him that actions have consequences. One evening, as I was enjoying a quiet dinner at home, there was a knock at the door. I opened it to find Harold standing on the porch, looking older and more tired than I'd ever seen him. "Evelyn," he said, his voice breaking. "I made a mistake. I was a fool to leave you. Please, can we talk?" I looked at him, remembering all the pain he'd caused, all the nights I'd spent alone, rebuilding my life from the ground up. I thought about the woman I'd become, the woman who had found strength in the face of betrayal, who had learned to stand tall and demand respect. I smiled, calm and unshaken. "Harold, I wish you well. But I've moved on. I hope you find what you're looking for." As I closed the door, I felt a sense of closure. I had taken back my life and I was finally free. After that night, I felt a peace I hadn't known in years. The house was truly mine now, not just in name but in spirit. I filled my days with things that brought me joy. I joined a local choir, something I'd always wanted to do but never had the time or confidence for. Singing with others, feeling my voice blend with theirs, was healing in a way I hadn't expected. I made new friends, women who had their own stories of heartbreak and resilience, and we supported each other through laughter, music, and the occasional tear. Melissa and James continued to be my anchors. Melissa encouraged me to travel, and together we planned a trip to the coast. We spent a week walking along the beach, collecting seashells and talking late into the night. She told me how proud she was of me, how much she admired my strength. "You showed me what it means to stand up for yourself, Mom," she said one evening as we watched the sun set over the water. "You taught me that it's never too late to start over." James too found ways to show his support. He helped me with repairs around the house, teaching me how to fix a leaky faucet and change a tire. "You don't need anyone to take care of you, Mom," he said with a grin. "But I'm always here if you need me." I realized that in losing Harold I had gained something far more valuable: a deeper connection with my children, a renewed sense of self, and a community of friends who understood what it meant to rebuild after loss. Meanwhile, word of Harold's troubles continued to circulate. Lisa had left him, moving on to someone new with more to offer. Harold tried to reach out to me again, leaving messages on my phone, sending letters, even showing up at my church one Sunday. Each time I was polite but firm. I had forgiven him, but I had no intention of letting him back into my life. One afternoon, I received a letter from Harold. It was long and rambling, full of apologies and regrets. He wrote about the loneliness he felt, the mistakes he'd made, and how much he missed the life we'd built together. He begged for another chance, promising that things would be different if I took him back. I sat with the letter for a long time, turning it over in my hands. I thought about the woman I'd been when Harold left, the woman who had doubted her worth, who had been afraid to stand alone. And I thought about the woman I'd become, the woman who had learned to find joy in her own company, who had discovered new passions, who had built a life she was proud of. I wrote Harold a short reply. I told him that I wished him well, that I hoped he found peace, but that my life was full and happy without him. I thanked him for the good years we'd shared, but I made it clear that I was moving forward. As the months passed, I continued to grow. I started teaching painting classes at the community center, sharing my love of art with others. I volunteered at the local animal shelter, finding comfort in the unconditional love of the dogs and cats I cared for. I even started dating again, meeting new people and discovering that it was possible to open my heart without fear. One evening, as I sat on the porch watching the fireflies dance in the twilight, Melissa joined me. She handed me a cup of tea and sat beside me, her head resting on my shoulder. "I'm proud of you, Mom," she said softly. "You turned something painful into something beautiful. You showed all of us what it means to forgive, to heal, and to move on." I smiled, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. "Thank you, sweetheart. I couldn't have done it without you and James. Family is everything." As the stars appeared in the night sky, I realized that my story wasn't just about betrayal and revenge. It was about resilience, about finding strength in the face of loss, and about choosing to live with hope and joy, no matter what life throws your way. As spring returned, so did a sense of renewal in my life. I found myself waking up each morning with a lightness I hadn't felt in years. The pain of Harold's betrayal had faded into something softer, a memory, not a wound. I poured my energy into the things that made me feel alive. My painting classes at the community center grew in popularity, and I was invited to display my work at a local art fair. Standing in front of my easel surrounded by colors and canvases, I felt a pride that was entirely my own. Melissa and James continued to be my biggest supporters. Melissa brought her friends to my art show, bragging about her talented mom to anyone who would listen. James helped me set up my booth, making sure every painting was perfectly straight. When I sold my first piece, a landscape of the beach we'd visited together, they cheered louder than anyone else. I realized that, in rebuilding my life, I had also deepened my relationship with my children. We were closer than ever, bound not just by blood, but by the trials we had overcome together. Outside of family, my circle of friends grew. The women in my choir became like sisters to me. We met for coffee after rehearsals, sharing stories and advice, laughing until our sides hurt. I found myself confiding in them and they in me. We celebrated each other's victories and comforted each other through setbacks. I realized that for the first time in a long time, I was surrounded by people who truly saw me. Not as Harold's wife, but as Evelyn, a woman with her own dreams and strengths. One day, I received an invitation to speak at a local women's group. They wanted me to share my story, how I had survived betrayal, found my voice and built a new life. I was nervous, but I agreed. Standing in front of that room full of women, I told the truth, that I had been broken but not defeated, that I had been angry but had chosen forgiveness, that I had been left behind but had learned to move forward. When I finished, the room erupted in applause. Several women approached me afterward, sharing their own stories of heartbreak and healing. I realized that my journey could inspire others, and that gave me a new sense of purpose. Meanwhile, Harold's life continued to unravel. I heard from mutual friends that he had lost his job and was struggling to make ends meet. Lisa was long gone, and he was living in a small apartment on the edge of town. He tried to reach out to me again, this time through James. He wants to apologize in person, James told me one afternoon. He says he's changed. I thought about it for a long time. Part of me wanted to see Harold to show him how well I was doing, to prove that I didn't need him. But another part of me knew that I didn't owe him anything. Not my time, not my forgiveness, not even my attention. I told James to let Harold know that I wished him well, but that my life was full and happy without him. As the months passed, I continued to grow. I traveled with Melissa, visiting places I'd only dreamed of, mountain towns, bustling cities, quiet lakesides. I took cooking classes, learned to dance, and even tried my hand at writing poetry. Each new experience was a reminder that life was still full of possibilities. One evening, as I sat on my porch watching the sunset, I reflected on everything I had been through. I realized that Harold's betrayal, as painful as it had been, had given me a gift, the chance to rediscover myself, to build a life that was truly my own. I was no longer defined by my marriage or my past. I was Evelyn, strong, independent, and unafraid to chase my dreams. I thought about all the women who might be listening to my story, women who had been hurt, abandoned, or betrayed. I wanted them to know that it was possible to heal, to forgive, and to find happiness again. I wanted them to know that they were not alone. As the stars appeared in the sky, I made a promise to myself. I would keep moving forward, keep embracing new adventures, and keep living with an open heart. Because life, I had learned, was too precious to waste on regret. Summer brought with it a sense of celebration. My garden was in full bloom, and I spent many mornings tending to the roses and hydrangeas, their colors brighter than I ever remembered. I hosted a small garden party for my friends from the choir and painting class. We sipped lemonade under the shade of the old oak tree, sharing stories and laughter that echoed through the yard. It was a simple gathering, but it felt like a victory, a testament to the new life I had built for myself. Melissa and James continued to be a constant presence. Melissa surprised me with tickets to a jazz concert in the city, and we made a weekend of it, exploring museums and trying new restaurants. James helped me build a raised bed for vegetables, and together we planted tomatoes, peppers, and herbs. Watching them grow, I was reminded of how much I had grown, too rooted in the past, but always reaching for the sun. One afternoon, I received a letter from a woman named Clara, who had heard me speak at the women's group. She wrote about her own heartbreak, about the husband who had left her for someone else, and about the loneliness that followed. "Your story gave me hope," she wrote. It made me believe that I could start over too. I wrote back encouraging her to take small steps, to find joy in the everyday, and to trust that healing would come with time. I realized then that my story was bigger than just me and Harold. It was about resilience, about the power of community, and about the importance of lifting each other up. I started volunteering at a local support group for women going through divorce and separation. I listened to their stories, offered advice when I could, and reminded them that they were stronger than they knew. Each meeting left me feeling grateful for my own journey and for the chance to help others find their way. Meanwhile, my relationship with Melissa and James continued to deepen. We made it a tradition to gather for Sunday dinners, each of us taking turns hosting. Sometimes we invited friends or neighbors, and the table was always full of food, laughter, and love. I cherished these moments, knowing that they were the true measure of a life well lived. One Sunday after dinner, Melissa pulled me aside. "Mom, I want you to know how much you mean to us. You've shown us what it means to be strong, to forgive, and to keep moving forward. I hope when I face challenges in my own life, I can be as brave as you." Her words brought tears to my eyes. I hugged her tightly, feeling the weight of the past lift from my shoulders. "You already are, sweetheart. You and James are my greatest accomplishments." As the summer days grew longer, I found myself looking forward to the future. I planned a trip with friends from the choir, a week in the mountains filled with hiking, singing, and late-night conversations under the stars. I signed up for a writing workshop, determined to put my story on paper, not just for myself, but for anyone who needed to hear it. One evening, as I sat on the porch watching the fireflies, I thought about Harold. I wondered if he had found peace, if he had learned from his mistakes. I no longer felt anger or resentment, just a quiet acceptance. Our paths had diverged, but I was grateful for the lessons I had learned along the way. I realized that revenge, in the end, wasn't about hurting Harold or making him beg for forgiveness. It was about reclaiming my life, finding happiness on my own terms, and showing the world and myself that I was more than the sum of my heartbreak. As the stars filled the sky, I whispered a silent thank you to the universe. For the pain that had made me stronger, for the love that had carried me through, and for the hope that had never left my side. As autumn arrived, I found myself reflecting on the journey that had brought me here. The leaves turned gold and crimson, and the air grew crisp, carrying the scent of wood smoke and possibility. I spent more time outdoors, walking the neighborhood trails and taking in the beauty of the changing season. Each step felt like a celebration of how far I'd come, from heartbreak and betrayal to a life filled with purpose and joy. My painting classes continued to thrive, and I was invited to display my work at a local gallery. The opening night was a whirlwind of excitement. Melissa and James were there, beaming with pride, and my friends from the choir and support group filled the room with laughter and encouragement. I stood in front of my favorite piece, a vibrant landscape inspired by the coast trip with Melissa, and felt a sense of accomplishment I'd never known before. People stopped to admire my work, asking about my inspiration, and I shared my story with honesty and hope. After the show, a woman approached me quietly. "Your paintings are beautiful," she said, "but your story is what moved me most. I'm going through something similar, and seeing you here tonight gives me hope that I can get through it too." We hugged, and I realized that my healing was helping others heal as well. Meanwhile, my friendship with Clara deepened. We met for coffee every week, sharing updates on our lives and supporting each other through the ups and downs. She told me about her progress, how she'd started taking yoga classes, reconnected with old friends, and even planned a solo trip to the beach. "I never would have done any of this if I hadn't heard your story," she admitted. "You showed me that it's never too late to start over." I was grateful for the community I had built, for the women who had become my sisters in resilience. We celebrated each other's victories, no matter how small, and offered comfort on the hard days. I realized that, in helping others, I was also helping myself. At home, I continued to nurture my garden, finding peace in the rhythm of planting, pruning, and harvesting. The roses Tasha and I had planted years ago were still thriving, a symbol of growth and forgiveness. I often thought about the lessons I wanted to pass on to Melissa and James, about the importance of self-respect, the power of forgiveness, and the courage to keep moving forward, no matter what. One evening, as we gathered for Sunday dinner, James made a toast. "To Mom." he said, raising his glass, for teaching us that life doesn't end when things fall apart. Sometimes that's when it really begins. We clinked our glasses, and I felt a wave of gratitude wash over me. I had survived betrayal, found my voice, and built a life that was truly my own. I was surrounded by love, by laughter, and by the knowledge that I was stronger than I'd ever imagined. As the night grew quiet, I sat on the porch, wrapped in a warm blanket, and watched the stars. I thought about Harold, about the pain he had caused, and about the forgiveness I had found, not just for him but for myself. I realized that my greatest revenge was not in making him suffer, but in living a life filled with joy, purpose, and love. I whispered a silent prayer of thanks, for the journey, for the lessons, and for the future that still awaited me. Winter settled in, bringing with it a quiet beauty and a sense of reflection. The garden rested beneath a layer of frost, and I found comfort in the routines I'd built. Painting by the window, reading by the fire, and hosting friends for warm, hearty meals. My home, once a place of sorrow, now felt like a sanctuary, filled with laughter, music, and the gentle hum of a life reclaimed. Melissa and James continued to be my greatest joys. Melissa announced she was expecting her first child, and the news filled our family with excitement. We spent afternoons planning for the baby, shopping for tiny clothes, and painting the nursery a soft, cheerful yellow. James, ever the handyman, built a beautiful crib, and I sewed a quilt from scraps of fabric collected over the years. The anticipation of a new life brought us even closer, reminding me that the future was still full of hope and possibility. My friendships deepened as well. Clara and I organized a holiday gathering for the women in our support group, filling my home with the scent of cinnamon and pine. We exchanged stories and gifts, each woman sharing something she had learned or accomplished that year. There were tears, of course, but also laughter and a sense of pride in how far we had all come. I realized that together we had created a community of strength, a place where no one had to face their struggles alone. One snowy evening, as I sat by the fire with a cup of tea, I received a letter from Harold. It was short but sincere. He wrote that he had finally found peace, that he was grateful for the years we had shared, and that he wished me happiness. I read the letter twice, feeling a sense of closure. I no longer felt anger or sadness, just a quiet acceptance that our paths had diverged, and that was okay. As the holidays approached, I decorated the house with Melissa and James, hanging ornaments and stringing lights. We baked cookies, sang carols, and shared stories from years past. On Christmas morning, we gathered around the tree, exchanging gifts and hugs. Melissa handed me a small box, and inside was a locket engraved with the words, "Strength, hope, love." I hugged her tightly, tears in my eyes. "You are all of those things, Mom," she whispered. That night, as I watched the snow fall outside, I reflected on the journey I had taken. I had faced betrayal, heartbreak, and uncertainty, but I had also found forgiveness, healing, and a new kind of happiness. My life was not what I had planned, but it was full and beautiful in ways I never could have imagined. I realized that true revenge was not about making Harold suffer, but about living well, about finding joy, building new dreams, and loving fiercely. I had become the woman I was always meant to be, strong, compassionate, and unafraid to start again. As the year drew to a close, I made a promise to myself to keep moving forward, to keep embracing new adventures, and to keep living with an open heart. Because life, I had learned, was not about what you lose, but about what you choose to create from the ashes. The new year dawned bright and cold, and with it came a sense of anticipation. I set new goals for myself. Small things like reading more books, learning to bake bread from scratch, and taking a solo trip to a city I'd always wanted to visit. I realized that, for the first time in decades, my life was truly my own. I could fill my days with whatever brought me joy, and I was determined to make the most of every moment. Melissa's pregnancy brought our family even closer. We spent weekends preparing for the baby, sorting through old family photos and sharing stories from my childhood. I found myself reflecting on the lessons I wanted to pass on, not just to my children but to my grandchild as well. I wanted them to know that life would not always be easy, but that they would always have the strength to overcome whatever came their way. James started dating a wonderful woman named Carla, and I was delighted to welcome her into our family. She fit in easily, joining us for Sunday dinners and sharing her own stories of resilience and hope. Our table grew larger, our laughter louder, and I felt a deep sense of gratitude for the love that surrounded me. My painting continued to flourish. I was invited to teach a workshop at the local college, and I found great joy in encouraging others to express themselves through art. My students ranged from young adults to retirees, each with their own stories and struggles. I shared my journey with them, hoping to inspire them to find beauty in their own lives, no matter what challenges they faced. One afternoon after class, a young woman approached me. She was quiet, her eyes downcast, but she thanked me for sharing my story. "I'm going through a divorce," she admitted, "and I didn't think I could survive it, but seeing you here so happy and full of life gives me hope." I hugged her, reminding her that healing takes time, but that it is always possible. At home, I continued to nurture my garden, even in the cold months. I started planning for spring, ordering seeds and sketching out new designs for the flower beds. The act of planning for the future, of believing in new growth, was healing in itself. As Melissa's due date approached, we grew more excited and a little nervous. We attended birthing classes together, and I promised to be there for her every step of the way. When the day finally arrived, I held her hand through every contraction, offering comfort and encouragement. When my granddaughter Lily was born, I wept tears of joy. Holding her for the first time, I felt the weight of the past lift, replaced by a hope so bright it brought me to my knees. Our family celebrated Lily's arrival with a gathering at my home. Friends and neighbors stopped by to offer congratulations, and the house was filled with flowers, laughter, and the sweet scent of new beginnings. I looked around the room, at the faces of those I loved, and realized that my life was richer than I had ever dreamed. That night, as I rocked Lily to sleep, I whispered a promise to her. "You are loved, you are strong, and you will always have a home in my heart." I knew there would be challenges ahead. There always are. But I also knew that I was ready for whatever came next. I had survived heartbreak, found my voice, and built a life filled with love, purpose, and hope. Spring returned with a burst of color, and my world felt alive with possibility. The garden was a riot of tulips and daffodils, and I spent hours outside with Lily, showing her how to plant seeds and watch them grow. Melissa often joined us, her laughter mingling with her daughters as we dug in the dirt and made plans for the summer. Watching them together, I felt a sense of fulfillment I hadn't known was possible. The pain of the past had faded, replaced by the joy of new beginnings. James and Carla announced their engagement, and our family celebrated with a backyard party. I watched as James looked at Carla with the same tenderness I remembered from his childhood, and I knew he had learned the lessons of love and resilience that I had fought so hard to teach. Our family was growing not just in number but in strength and connection. My friendships continued to flourish. Clara and I organized a spring retreat for the women in our support group, renting a cabin in the woods where we could hike, cook together, and share our stories around a crackling fire. We talked late into the night, supporting each other through laughter and tears. I realized that these women, once strangers, had become sisters, each of us stronger for having walked through the fire and come out the other side. At the community center, my painting classes were more popular than ever. I watched with pride as my students found their own voices, expressing their hopes and fears on canvas. One of my students, a widower named Sam, became a close friend. We spent afternoons painting together, sharing stories of loss and healing. His gentle humor and quiet strength were a comfort, and I found myself looking forward to our time together. One afternoon, as we sat in the garden, Sam turned to me and said, "Evelyn, you've built something beautiful here. Not just in your home but in your life. You've shown all of us that it's possible to start over, no matter how old we are or how much we've lost." His words touched me deeply. I realized that my journey had come full circle. I had started out broken and afraid, but I had rebuilt my life piece by piece, with the help of family, friends, and my own determination. I had learned to forgive not just Harold but myself for the years I had doubted my worth, for the times I had been afraid to stand up for what I deserved. As summer approached, I planned a family trip to the coast, wanting to create new memories with Melissa, James, Carla, and little Lily. We spent a week walking the beach, collecting shells and building sandcastles. In the evenings, we cooked together and watched the sun set over the water. I felt a deep sense of peace, knowing that I had created a legacy of love and resilience for my children and granddaughter. One evening, as we sat around a bonfire, Melissa asked, Mom, do you ever regret how things turned out? I thought for a moment, then shook my head. No, sweetheart. I wouldn't wish the pain on anyone, but I wouldn't trade the lessons I've learned or the life I have now. Sometimes the hardest endings lead to the most beautiful beginnings. As the fire crackled and the stars appeared overhead, I felt a quiet joy settle in my heart. I had survived betrayal, found my strength, and built a life filled with love, hope, and new adventures. I knew there would be more challenges ahead, but I also knew that I was ready for whatever came next. Summer's warmth lingered as our family returned from the coast, and I found myself savoring every ordinary moment. The house was often filled with the sound of Lily's laughter, the aroma of fresh bread baking, and the gentle hum of conversation as Melissa and Carla planned James's wedding. My garden was at its peak, and I spent quiet mornings tending to the flowers, grateful for the peace and beauty that now filled my life. One afternoon, as I sat on the porch with Sam, sipping iced tea and watching Lily chase butterflies, I realized how much my world had changed. I was no longer the woman who had been left behind. I was the woman who had chosen to move forward, to forgive, and to build something new. Sam smiled at me, his eyes kind. You know, Evelyn, you're the strongest person I know. You turned heartbreak into hope, and you've inspired everyone around you. I smiled, feeling the truth of his words. I didn't do it alone. I had my family, my friends, and a lot of help from above. But I did make a choice to live, to love, and to let go of what I couldn't change. As James and Carla's wedding day approached, our family gathered to celebrate. The ceremony was simple and beautiful, held in the garden I had nurtured for so many years. Melissa was the maid of honor. Lily scattered petals down the aisle, and I stood beside James, my heart full of pride. When he hugged me after the vows, he whispered, "Thank you, Mom, for everything, for teaching me what real love looks like." That night, as we danced under the stars, I thought about Harold. I wondered if he had found peace, if he had learned to forgive himself. I no longer felt anger or regret, just a quiet gratitude for the journey that had brought me here. I knew that my greatest revenge was not in making him suffer, but in living a life so full and joyful that he could only look on with longing and perhaps a little bit of awe. As the seasons turned once more, I continued to teach, to paint, and to nurture the relationships that mattered most. I watched Lily grow, her curiosity and kindness a daily reminder of the legacy I was leaving behind. I traveled with friends, tried new things, and never stopped learning. My life was not perfect, but it was real and it was mine. To anyone listening, I want you to know, you are stronger than you think. Heartbreak is not the end of your story. With time, courage, and the support of those who love you, you can build a life that is even more beautiful than the one you lost. Forgiveness is not weakness. It is the key to your own freedom. Thank you for listening to my story. If it touched your heart, please share your thoughts in the comments, subscribe for more true stories, and remember, your voice matters. We are all stronger together.